Good afternoon. Good morning.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Wherever you are, whenever you are.
Yes. I'm in
Hello.
the new world.
Hello.
Hi, Johan.
Nice to meet you at
How are
the
you? Good to meet
podcast.
you as well.
Hi,
Yes.
Johan.
Hello again. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Been looking forward to it. So, shall we get to it then?
Yes, indeed.
Because we only have limited time wise. So, right, should we say some number two first before we begin?
Absolutely.
You want to lead us, Kyokan?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu.
Namo. Namo. Namo.
Namo.
Lovely. Well, welcome to Shaku, another amazing episode of the Shaku Brothers.
It's been a while.
Has to be said, it has been a while. It has been far too long a time. Indeed. So let me bring up, and while we're on the subject of Shaku Brothers, let me share my screen, and we'll read we must read the rules of Shaku Brothers as always. So bear with me a moment. Just going to get this set up here. Go. All right. So the rules of Shaku Brothers. Do not talk about anything but authentic Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism. 2. Do not talk about anything but authentic Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism. 3. If someone asks questions, expresses doubts, or has barriers, the dialogue continues. 4. Anyone can engage in authentic, sincere, humane, civil discussion. 5. As many texts and readings as possible, please. 6. No scholarly debates, no listening over hedge. 7. Discussions will go on for as long as they have to. And the 8th and final rule of Shaku Brothers, if this is your first time on Shaku Brothers, you have to pick the topic. So there you go. Has to be done. So Johan is our new guest on Shaku Brothers. We're very excited to have him, and very excited to have him back in the UK with connected with our small Sangha, small but growing, I like to think, Sangha in the UK. Anyway, unofficial Sangha, I suppose. So just getting this, I've got this booted up. Unless somebody else wants to start with a different passage on the topic and introduce the topic, please, actually, before we do this, Johan, why don't you go ahead? I'm going to stop sharing. And Johan, you go ahead and actually share your topic, what you want to talk about, first of all.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's been quite a while ago that I picked that, but so yeah, I wanted to talk about the merit transference of returning, or now the Japanese, which I've always got trouble with. It's the Genso Echo, is that right?
Genso Echo, yes.
Genso Echo, yeah. See, I've got the kanji in my head, but the Japanese pronunciation eludes me. And so the reason I wanted to talk about this is it's very personal. As you know, because we talked about that in one of the group chats, George Gettenby's, so little bit of context. George was a very good friend of mine. I consider him one of my teachers. I met him very early on in Shin, because I was in my time in Shin, because I came to it when I was living in Australia. And he had a very profound effect on me. You may or may not know. Also, I have to apologize to him. Despite having known him for years, he was always George to me, so I never know if I'm pronouncing his surname correctly, which is crazy, right? But anyway, You know, he passed to the other shore in 2021. And my last conversation with him was when on the phone when he was in the hospice, which I mean it was a Catholic hospice, but they were very, you know, they were very good to him. And I remember that sort of the very last thing I ever talked to about him, which you know, it was like it was you know, I just asked him because at that point in sort of my journey, my faith wasn't settled yet. It was very much sort of, you know, that very yeah, that you know, when it's chaotic and you don't know, and it's sort of very
Yes.
anxious period. Yeah,
Unsettled.
I think anyone, most people who've been involved with the Shin know what I'm talking
It's
about.
very unsettling indeed.
Yeah, yeah.
Or any religion for that matter.
Well, yes, indeed. And although, you know, as a side note, I know at least one person who, like, the first Shin text they read immediately settled. Like, I mean, barely any involvement in Buddhism, read this one thing, and then that was it. And I always thought, you know, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah, there are
that
people
I
who
would,
do have that.
It's like
kind
the
of
like the
problem.
man that Honen and Ren or Honen and Shinron Shonen's approached on the road, and he talked to him for a short, you know, Honen talked to him for a short sign and time, and then told Shinron said that, you know, that
Yeah.
man's birth is settled, you know, after just a one conversation.
Mm,
It's like, oh, to have those karmic causes and conditions and good from the past
So
to
ripe that
unfold
they're
that way. Yeah,
falling off the
just
vine.
exactly. That was not the case for me, I have to say. That is definitely not the case for me. Anyway, continue, Jan.
Anyway, so the very last thing I said to him was just to, you know, don't forget me, you know, come back for me, because, you know, his departure was imminent. You know, he said he wouldn't forget me, and you know, it's sort of a couple of years after that before I felt like my faith was really settled. But I don't know how, you know, how orthodox that is, but I always felt that there was, you know, specifically his, you know, I can't say concretely in this way, but that his coming back, his merit transference back, his sort of being. I think I shared a piece that John Parskopoulos wrote about how, because, you know, there's going to be various takes on this, and that's what we're here to ultimately talk about.
Yeah.
But, sorry, without going off in that direction, basically, I felt his merit transference coming back had something to do with that, you know. So
Yeah.
that was and since his book came out recently, I thought that would be an interesting thing to discuss. Also, and
Yeah, Songs of Light.
sorry.
To just to clarify, the book is the late Reverend George Gattenby's commentary in English on the Japanese hymns of Shinron. It's available in 3 volumes. I personally got a copy, and I'm really looking forward to reading through the entire thing. But yeah, if anyone is interested in that book, you can get it on Amazon, and it is a very nice paperback. So
yeah, I mean, I've got copies back there.
Yeah,
strongly
I definitely have I never met Reverend Gattenby, but I had always have been definitely he's been a major. His writings have been a huge sort of influence in my path, definitely, and through others that have acted as teachers or guides for me. They have impacted, you know, them. So, you know, that as well. So it's kind of like, I think even before he passed, that was that that was already happening. That Bodhisattva activity kind of was already happening in some sense. But
oh yeah.
and I think the same of Paul Roberts, you know, having, you know, considered him a teacher for quite a while, and had, you know, being connected with the True Shin Buddhism online sangha. You know, I often have thought about that, you know, over the years, having that connection with him, and him, you know, his the, you know, the merit transference of coming back through him, you know, and helping all of us. It's yeah, kind of blows my mind sometimes when I think about it. But anyway, and you know, knowing that I'm connected with him in some way, you know, it's that because of that part of it, which we'll get to, but, you know, where you one of the things is you are helping the people you have karmic connections with, strong or so anyway, go ahead. Yeah, sorry. Please continue.
No, that was
That was everything.
wonderful.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it's funny you mentioned that, because Paul Roberts is that's sort of one of the points of things I wanted to talk about, because yeah, I never met him. I was very briefly, I don't know if I was at the same time as you, but very briefly on the True Shin in that group, but that was after he passed. But he had, I love this, particularly had, there's kind of the shorter videos he has in his,
Mhm.
or had on his, has had, I don't know the tense here, on his channel, that are sort of, kind of these really his own, in his own very peculiar, not peculiar, but very idiosyncratic
I
register
know what you
of, like,
mean. Yeah.
this is the teaching. It really spoke to me, and particularly this thing, about this awful thing that happened with his daughter, and how he thought, like, okay, I can't do anything to help her now, but after I go to the Pure Land, I
Yes.
can come and wherever she is, and I can help her. And that really, really speaks to me. I mean, just speaking very personally, that's one of the things that is so compelling about Shin, because there's so many people, people I have personal connections to, that I'd like to help, but it's just beyond what I can
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
And it is incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Reassuring, or
Comforting, perhaps, or
comforting is the
Yeah.
word I'm looking for. Yeah, thank you. It's incredibly comforting to know that, um you know, not that long far from now in the grand scheme of things. I mean, best case scenario, a few decades. Um, uh, there is something concrete I can do about that, right? And in some way that now eludes me. I don't know how that works right now. But that, that's I think that's something really special, that I'll have some, in some sense, some kind of personal involvement in coming and helping people that I can't help right now. And Shinron Shonen, I think, says something to that effect about, that right now I'm not even capable of small compassion, but after my Buddhahood, then,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean, I think I can't think of anything more wonderful. Yeah, sorry, I've been flapping my lip.
Nope. Yeah, I very much relate to what you're saying. In my journey as well. It was this teaching was hugely important right from the beginning when I started to explore Jodo Shinshu Buddhism specifically. I had been exploring Pure Land Buddhism in general, kind of in all its various manifestations, and as part of other schools, and as a school itself. And but mostly it was the more traditional or Chinese, or the newer kind of versions of schools of Pure Land Buddhism, but not Jodo Shinshu. And they didn't really, it was kind of one of many things, it seemed like, this aspect of Amita's merit transference. It was kind of one of just many things about the Pure Land, but mostly it seemed like it was just when I was, what I studied or read of those teachings, or encountered, I should say, of those teachings, or understood of those teachings. It just seemed like it was just kind of one of many aspects of that. And it wasn't, didn't seem like it was the primary focus. Whereas in Jodo Shinshu, it's very like, that kind of, I was like, whoa, like that, it was almost like, okay, immediately first of all, the whole idea of like, in Pure Land Buddhism, the merit transference gets you there, Mita's merit transference gets you the Pure Land, but then you practice there for possibly a long time, or depending on your own karmic causes and conditions. And it's because it's it's the perfect conditions, then you can practice there as a monk, and as a, what I mean? That's what I gleaned from these other, Pure Land gates and schools and parts of other types of Buddhism. But Jodo Shinshu, it was like, okay, first of all, immediately you become a Buddha when because of Shinjin in this life because of the arising and settling of Shinjin in this life and all that happens with that. Immediately when you die and you are born as a Buddha in Pure Land, fully as a Buddha from the lotus, and then immediately you're already coming back. So it gives new meaning to the whole, be right back. Yeah. Instead of RIP for most people, it's for Buddhists, it's be right back, and gave new meaning to that because it was literally, yep, you die, you go to Pure Land, and you're back. You're not hanging out, although part of you will be making, you'll be going and making offerings and going to multiple Buddha lands, and do you know what I mean, simultaneously. But one of the aspects that you'll be doing is immediately coming back, and that was just a very powerful. I was like, hang on a second. It's like, let me get this straight, and it just kind of opened my mind to a whole nother teaching, obviously, and that was a hugely important aspect, and some of that did come through in Paul Roberts' videos for me. That was something that he did emphasize, I think, or if not there in the the email group that was often discussed. And so it was that was there right from the beginning for me, and really key aspect, because it was like, you finally realize this is the ultimate expression of the Bodhisattva, teaching the Bodhisattva reality, so thanks.
Well, what I like about it too is, like somebody said, when somebody was born into the Pure Land, when they got to the Pure Land, there was nobody there. And they asked, where is everybody? And then they said, well, they're all out in samsara, saving people, saving beings, working for the benefit of, so there's nobody in the Pure Land. I love that analogy, but it refers, it demonstrates, it points to the the concept of the nirvana of no abode, in Mahayana, where the Bodhisattva, the Buddha, actually doesn't remain in nirvana, because he has to return. And the Bodhisattva vow is, unless all beings are saved, I won't realize the supreme, I won't enter into nirvana. So that's kind of the Pure Land sort of concretizes that ideal, which is really the pinnacle of, in my opinion, Mahayana teaching. And that's why for a lot of Buddhists over the centuries, Shin Buddhism has kind of really come forth as like the quintessential Mahayana Buddhist school, I think, for exactly that reason.
Yeah, definitely. And the other aspect too I related to that you said, Johan, was about the other personal aspect of the people that you want to help. And I try not to well up when I talk about this, but I always do, and get a catch in my throat. The people in my life, family, friends, former whatevers, girlfriends, former friends, enemies, whoever, there's, people I wish I'd acted differently with, the people I wish, I wish I'd been a better son or a better brother or a better, this or that or the other thing, and this teaching, you can give them on your return, you give them the best relationship that they could ever have, which is that Bodhisattva relationship of helping. And as you can see, it's a very, very powerful, personal, emotional aspect of this teaching for me, that's what I'll be doing is those karmic ties, and all the people I don't remember from other lifetimes, and beings that I don't remember from other lives, and animals, and everything else. So it's a very strong, that aspect for me is and that it feels like that is what I put, I put all of that into this teaching, right? Is if that's what, that longing to make things better. I wish I had done this, or I wish I had done that, or all those regrets, or all I can put into, I can come back. I can correct. I can. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's very powerful. And I think, it reminds me of the passages in Tani Show, and the really beautiful one where it says, we will be able to save all beings, beginning with those of the 6 relationships. So, in other words, starting with those with whom we have had deep karmic ties. And if you think about it, the compassion of the Buddha is completely doesn't discriminate in any way. But the Buddha also has to start somewhere, right? So when Shakyamuni decided to preach the Dharma, the first people he thought of was the monks with whom he had practiced austerities. They might, and that's what I love about Buddhism, is the practical aspect of the salvation aspect. Is it starts with where we are and the relationships we already have. It's not abstract in some way, like, because sometimes when
just
we
like
say
everything else, just like everything else about it, it's
it's
very
like if
practical,
we say,
very real.
I'm going to become a Buddha and save all beings. Well, all beings, that's hard to even get your head around, right? But in the Tana Show, it kind of, starts with those of the 6 relationships. So, and that reminds me of how, how they say, like, if you know someone who knows someone who, knows the King of England, or, whatever.
Kevin Bacon, the Kevin Bacon connection.
You know someone who knows Brad Pitt, or, and it's true. And that's, Aiken Kobai Sensei pointed out that that's kind of what the 6 relationships is pointing at, is by the time you get to 6, that's almost everybody on the planet. I mean, within 3, most people know, like, a huge number of people. 6 is like exponential. So, you start with where you're at, and that's, and then you go on from there, just like Shakyamuni did. And then the other thing I like is the poetic, I don't want to say poetic, I don't like to use that word, because the very dynamic language in Tani Show of, we become one with the light. And then through that becoming one with the light, we, shine on everywhere, all beings, and liberate, So, that's kind of how I like to think of, for example, Reverend George is, he's with us now. It's not a question of, like, thinking, trying to puzzle out how, George will be, impacting our lives. He's already here. I mean, look at his books. I'm reading his words, and he's in the fact that, we're saying the Nimbutsu. It's kind of like Shinran says, although it's apocryphal, but, Shinran said, we're even one person says the Nimbutsu. I think Conan said this too. He's not alone, because Shinran, will be in there with him. And I'll return just like the waters return into the bay. He's referring to a bay in Japan. So you're right. I mean, but I think it's one of the most beautiful and important parts actually of our tradition is because we don't just go to heaven and then have fun and hang out and lucky for us, and too bad that all those other people went to the other place. No, we come back, we return, as Buddha, as Buddhas,
And
as
we go as Bodhisattvas to that other place.
yeah, we go
We go to the
everywhere.
hells.
And
We go
so
everywhere. We go to the hells, the
yeah,
ghost realms,
you
the animal realm, we go to all of them, the God Deva
know
realms. Yeah.
and the flip side of this too is, if you read like Rinyo, a lot of the medieval Japanese texts and stuff, I mean, people were coming and going from the Pure Land all the time back then in those people's minds. I mean, they were referring to people as, having been Honan or having been Zone Shonin or having been Shantao. They lived in a culture which was a Buddhist culture where that was just kind of taken for granted. But unfortunately, our culture doesn't, have that concept. We have kind of a linear, you die, you go to heaven, you're happy forever kind of idea of the afterlife that doesn't incorporate the idea of returning to help and to save others for the most part. Now, there are, like, for example, the Scottish author George MacDonald, in some of his writings, he actually does kind of get pretty close in a Christian sort of context, to the idea of, I think, the Bodhisattva ideal, but it's very, very rare, and it's not explicit, it's not doctrinally laid out the way it is for us in, our Bible, essentially, Kyogyo Shinsho and the three Pure Land Sutras. So anyway, that was a long-winded. Maybe Johan has something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, Johan, if you want to come in again.
I had it actually relates sort of more to what Gankai was saying, was expressing, but I just had this sort of, it was on my, I come into this with sort of a list of points I want to hit and just have to, right, like, but because I've been thinking about it for so long.
Yeah, it
but
never works out that way in Shaku
No,
Brother.
yeah, exactly. And I know it's going to be
have a
2 a.m.
circle,
tomorrow.
have just a circle of ideas, and then try to get some of them in there. Yeah, sorry, good.
But I've always been, because like you, I didn't come straight to Shin. I mean, pretty quickly, but I was involved in lots of other things, and particularly in Pure Land and Chinese Pure Land also. And I actually, like you, I mean, sort of probably some of the same sort of strands. But I've always been really really drawn to the image of Guanyin Avalokiteshvara Kanon, whatever we prefer. And particularly, and this is not an image that is used in the Shin tradition, but the 11-headed, 10,000 armed esoteric Guanyin. And I was listening to a talk from, I think it was David Matsumoto, on the BCA channel, where he actually talks about this, about that image, and it's related to our topic, which is, so I made that mental note when I saw that, which is, I don't know what the scriptural basis for this is, because I've never heard it referred to what sutra this is from, or if it even is from a sutra. But the story that's been relayed to me a few times about what, the 10,000 arms and the 11 heads, is that Guanyin, I mean, she hears the cries of the world. She feels the suffering of the world, and so wants to help, that, or her compassion is so great that her head splits into 11 parts, and she so wants to help, to reach out to help everyone, and that her arms split into sort of 10,000 pieces. And then Amida, and I think this is really crucial, it's Amida who grants her then 11 heads, so that she can hear the
Wow,
suffering, and
cool.
gives her the 10,000 arms so that she can go. And exactly, and I thought sort of how that symbolically, even though that's not an image or a story that's used in Shin, it fits so perfectly, because it's that's exactly the experience of, I mean, not that I'm a Guanyin, but I think we you hear the suffering to some extent, and it's more than you can bear, and you want to help, but it's more than you're capable of. And then it's Amida who makes you able to, as a bodhisattva, eventually hear all that, and more importantly, to reach out and help all that. So, also just personally, it was really cool to see that kind of my interest in that image, or my attraction to that image, affirmed in some way. And also, yeah, just like, I mean, kind of what you were expressing earlier, it's really painful, and but also it's really moving, and there's something overwhelming about knowing that kind of the source of that pain can be addressed, right? And that for me at least is an enormous source of gratitude to Amida, because it's because of him that you can do something about that. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's yeah.
Could I say
It just
something
sort of takes care of
addressing?
every. Well, just one really quickly
Go,
thing I
yeah,
wanted
go
to
ahead,
say
Gil.
about my sort of Buddhist altar, Butsudan, that should be referred to as, is not very Jodo Shinshu traditional, I'll say. So I have the image of Amida I have is the one that it's accompanied by the two, the traditional two bodhisattvas, one being obviously Avalokiteshvara, Maha Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, and Maha Mahastama Prapta Bodhisattva. And that,
Yeah.
when I see, I got that because it was one of the few things that was available that I could get online for that image years ago, and it became very special. It's become very special to me over the years, and I know other people that have gotten the same one. It's the wooden. It's like it comes in like a little cylinder, like and it unfolds kind of with the hinges.
Another one, yeah.
Yeah, and I know other people have gotten it. It's become very, but that's when I see it. Obviously I see Amida, but it immediately makes me think of the Bodhisattva plan. It's the Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
That's what it's, that's what it's about. That's what all of Buddhism is about, including our school of Buddhism, and even I'd say honed to a fine perfection in Jodo Shinshu by through the Dharma masters and the teachings. But anyway, so that it always kind of, I think of this aspect of the merit transfers of the return when I see them, and I see the two bodhisattvas there on the other side. But anyway, yeah. So what were we going to say? Kyokan, go. We've still got some time.
Oh, well, now I have even
7
more
minutes,
things
several
to
minutes
say
actually. But
because,
yeah.
oh boy. So what you have sounds a bit like the Iko Sanzone image in Zenkoji, the enormous Pure Land temple that Shinran was actually affiliated with. According to our best historical guess, Shinran essentially proselytized in Eastern Japan as a hijiri, or a sort of wandering monk, if you will, associated with the sort of the blessing of Zenkoji, because that was the first image that was probably worshipped at the temple he founded that became Takadaha, the Takada Monto. Was the Amida with the Avalokiteshvara and the other Bodhisattva on the sides in one halo. Iko means one light, and that is to remind you that they are manifestations of the same light, right? The same wisdom, as Shinran writes in his hymns. But so I was going to say something about what Johann said, and just to add to that is, it reminds me of the line from Shoshinge, when it's talking about, I think, Donron's teaching, Tanlon, the master Tanlon, and in one of the patriarchs or Pure Land masters. Ogin Eiko Yu Tariki. So both the merit transference, or the directing of virtue of going forth and of going and returning, are both other power. So, as you said, Johann, that we are enabled by Amida, and then you were talking about the imagery the symbolism with the statues of Kannon Bosatsu. That's exactly Ogen Eiko Yu Tariki. It's Amida's power, Buddha's power that enables that, the coming and going. It's like Saichi, Saichi, the what are they called? Miyoko Nin said, I'm there and I'm back. In the Pure Land. We're there and we're back,
Be
through
right back.
through the working of other power. Through the working of other power, And so, yeah, nothing is wasted. No being is expendable.
No being left behind.
No being left behind. So that's what the most important part that I just wanted to say.
Excellent. Thank you. Johan, did you was there anything else to is there any thoughts you wanted to take us out with? We've got like less than 4 minutes left, so you could
4 minutes,
you could bring it home.
So real quick, so is it like a 10-minute gap after that?
Yeah, after this, and it'll just be you and I for that one. So we could get into some. I'll phone you in between on Facebook, and so we can plan out. But go ahead, please go.
So while we have and it's just the only other sort of point I wanted to hit was that, like, which is a little non sequitur from what we were just talking about, but like, the way I see Genso Echo usually talked about it sort of in the modern context, which I guess does relate to something you were saying earlier, is purely in terms of like how our memory of the person who passed relates to us, or in sort of this kind of very rationalistic sort of way. And that might be part of it. Like, I don't deny that for a minute, but I don't think it can be. It can't be reduced to that, right? And
oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and for one thing, maybe this will alienate a bunch of people. I'm totally comfortable with this kind of medieval idea of people coming back, and I don't know who's come from the Pure Land. Maybe people think I'm wacky. That's fine. You remember one of your earlier things you said, like, kind of something, you can be cool with something, and it's like, yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm fine. But also, in addition to that as well, there's also kind of a way that there's in an individuated manner, people are coming back and helping, but in a manner that I don't understand, that I can't.
Oh yeah, and it is.
But we talked about that at we talked about an aspect of that, I think, in for a while. Actually, it kept coming up again in the weekly Dharma study that I had with a couple of other people here in the UK, that about the Bodhisattva coming in the form of just causes and conditions, the Buddha coming in the form of just causes and conditions, not even as a particular Nirmanakaya being, but somehow just as the causes and conditions to kind of set things up or steer things in the right direction or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And the Buddhas can take the form of objects, of things. Buddhas can take any form, not just of
it's
people,
like the ultimate
but that's what's called.
It's the ultimate Odo. It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate. What were they called? The founders. It's the ultimate founder. In Star Trek, I'm referring to Deep Space Nine. Sorry.
To address what Johan was saying, because sometimes people nowadays talk about it in like this sort of abstract, like, it's just the memory we have of the person, but they're really gone, and that kind of thing. Well, I actually think of like most of my teachers in the sense of like, oh, they're visiting from the Pure Land, like whether it was George Gatenby or many people. I just think of them as, oh, they're coming and going from the Pure Land. They're returnees already. Here to teach me. And so. But yeah, there's no doubt that I think Shinron, envisioned the returning as a personal, as
Yeah.
something that we actually experience. Because